Base 47 stood in the middle of a wide desert, surrounded by sand and strong wind. The sun burned hot above the metal roofs. The sound of machines and marching boots filled the air. It was a normal day for the soldiers and workers who lived there. Most of them had followed the same routine for months. They woke up before sunrise, trained, repaired equipment, and sent reports to higher command. Among the people working there was a quiet mechanic named Daniel. He was not a soldier, but a support worker who kept the base machines running. He was known for his calm nature and steady hands. He did not talk much, but was respected for his skill. Whenever a drone engine failed or a transport vehicle broke down, Daniel was the one who fixed it. The base also had a small science team that handled the power systems and communication devices. Among them was Mira, a young woman who was new to the desert base. She had a kind voice and a sharp mind. She wore her white uniform neatly and often smiled even when tired. Most soldiers liked her because she treated everyone with respect. That morning, Mira and Daniel had been working together in the control room. They were trying to stabilize the power grid that supplied energy to the whole base. The system had been giving small warnings for days, and Mira wanted to prevent a full failure. As the afternoon heat grew stronger, the warning lights suddenly turned red. A loud alarm echoed through the room. Daniel ran to the power console while Mira checked the data on her tablet. The electric lines vibrated and sparks flashed from a panel near the wall. "What happened?" a soldier shouted from the doorway. "The generator is overheating," Mira replied quickly. "We must reduce the load before it damages the core." Daniel grabbed a wrench and ran to the backup valve. He turned it to release the pressure, but it was too late. The lights flickered and then went out for 5 long seconds. When they came back, several machines had stopped working. A group of soldiers entered the room. Among them was Ralph, a man known for his short temper. He was a tall, strong officer who often spoke harshly to others. Ralph looked around the control room and saw Mira standing near the damaged console. "What have you done?" he shouted. "You caused this power cut." Mira looked up from her tablet. "Sir, the system failed because of overheating. We were trying to fix it before—" "Do not talk back to me," Ralph interrupted. His voice grew louder and sharper. The other soldiers watched silently. Daniel stepped forward. "Sir, she is right. It was not her fault." "The circuit," Ralph ignored Daniel completely. He walked closer to Mira. His face was red with anger. Without warning, he raised his hand and hit her on the face. The sound filled the room like a thunderclap. Mira fell against the control table. Everyone froze in shock. No one spoke. The air became heavy. Mira held her cheek and slowly looked up. Her eyes were wide, not in anger but in disbelief. She had never been treated like that in her life. She took a step back, her hands trembling slightly. Daniel felt his heart pound in his chest. His first instinct was to move forward, but 2 soldiers beside him stopped him by instinct. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists. His voice shook as he spoke. "Sir, that was not right," Daniel said. Ralph turned toward him with a cold stare. "Do you want to join her?" "Get back to work." No one else moved. The silence grew painful. Ralph left the control room, muttering under his breath. The other soldiers followed him slowly, not daring to speak. When the door closed, Daniel went to Mira. She was still standing near the table, holding her face. "Are you hurt?" he asked softly. She shook her head. "I am fine. It just shocked me." Daniel looked at her cheek, which had turned red. "You should rest," he said. Mira tried to smile but could not. "If I stop working, they will say I failed. I cannot let that happen." Daniel understood her words. He knew how the base worked. Mistakes were often punished even when people only tried to help. But what had happened today was not a mistake. It was wrong, and he could not pretend it was nothing. After a few minutes, he left the control room and walked toward the command building. His steps were quick and firm. Inside the small office, a communication officer was typing reports. Daniel asked for permission to send a direct message to higher command. "That is for officers only," the man said. "It is an emergency," Daniel replied. His voice was calm but steady. The officer hesitated but finally gave him access to a secure terminal. Daniel typed every detail of what had happened. He wrote how Mira was struck without reason, and how no one else spoke up. He signed his name at the end and sent it directly to Central Command. He returned to his workshop and tried to focus on his tools, but his hands kept shaking. He did not know what would happen next. Less than half an hour later, the sound of engines thundered across the sky. Everyone in the base looked up. 3 black aircrafts were flying low, moving fast toward Base 47. The soldiers came out to see what was happening. The aircrafts landed near the main yard, raising clouds of sand. From them stepped 3 generals dressed in dark uniforms with silver marks on their shoulders. They did not smile. They did not greet anyone. Their faces showed pure authority. The base commander rushed to meet them. "Generals, we were not informed of your visit," he said nervously. One of the generals looked at him with cold eyes. "We received a report from this base 20 minutes ago. Where is the control team?" The commander pointed toward the main building. The generals walked straight past him, their boots striking the ground in rhythm. Every soldier in the area stood still and saluted. Inside the control room, Mira was still working silently, trying to repair the damaged circuits. Daniel stood nearby, helping her with the tools. When the door opened, the 3 generals entered with firm steps. Their eyes moved across the room. One of them spoke. "Who is Mira?" She turned slowly. "I am, sir." The general looked at her, then at her cheek. The red mark was still visible. He then turned toward the soldiers standing in the back. "Who is Ralph?" Ralph stepped forward hesitantly. His confidence from earlier had vanished. The general's voice was steady and cold. "You raised your hand against another officer of this base?" Ralph swallowed hard. "Sir, it was a misunderstanding. She failed to follow orders and I—" "Silence," the general said sharply. "You had no right." The other 2 generals walked around the room, checking the machines, the workers, and the faces of everyone present. After a short moment, one of them said, "Effective immediately, Base 47 operations are suspended. No one leaves until we finish the investigation." Everyone stared in disbelief. Soldiers whispered among themselves. The commander looked pale. The first general turned to Mira. "You will be given medical care and a full report will be taken from you. Do not be afraid to speak the truth." Mira nodded quietly. Then the general looked at Daniel. "You are the one who sent the message, correct?" Daniel hesitated but answered, "Yes, sir." The general gave a short nod. "You did the right thing. Stay close. We will need your statement." Outside, soldiers gathered in groups, unsure what was happening. The entire base seemed to hold its breath. The sky above was clear and silent again. But everyone knew that the world inside Base 47 had changed forever. The day that began with simple work had ended with the arrival of 3 generals and the complete shutdown of the base. None of them knew what secrets or truths would be revealed next. The entire Base 47 had turned silent. Soldiers who were always busy with drills now stood in lines waiting for orders. The 3 generals who arrived earlier had taken full control. Even the commander who once gave every command now waited for their instructions. The desert wind blew across the base, carrying dust and tension through the air. Mira was sitting in the medical room. A quiet nurse cleaned the side of her face where Ralph had struck her. The nurse spoke softly. "It will heal soon. Try to rest," Mira nodded. Her mind was full of thoughts. She had never seen generals arrive so quickly before. Usually it took weeks for any higher officer to visit such a far base. Yet now 3 of the most powerful officers stood outside, questioning everyone. She wondered if Daniel was all right. Across the yard, Daniel sat inside a small briefing room. A guard stood near the door. The middle-aged general who had spoken earlier entered with 2 assistants. He placed a small recorder on the table and sat down across from Daniel. "Your name is Daniel. You are a mechanic, not a soldier," the general began. "Yes, sir," Daniel answered politely. "You sent a direct message to Central Command. That is not common. Tell me everything that happened from the start." Daniel took a breath and began to explain. He told them about the power system failure, Mira's attempt to fix it, Ralph's anger, and the moment he hit her. He did not add emotion to his story. He just told it as it happened. The general listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, the general looked at his assistants and nodded. "You did the right thing. Do you know why our response was so fast?" Daniel shook his head. "No, sir. Because the person you reported is not just any officer. Ralph has been under quiet observation for months. There were signs of misconduct in other bases, but no one ever reported it directly." "You did," Daniel was surprised. He had not known anything about Ralph's past. The general continued. "You may have helped us stop something worse." Outside the briefing room, soldiers watched as Ralph was escorted out of the dormitory by guards. His face was tense. He looked around, but no one dared to meet his eyes. He was taken to a secure area at the edge of the base where the generals had set up their temporary command post. Inside the main hall, the 3 generals met with the base commander. The senior general placed a folder on the table. Base 47 is now under suspension. We will inspect all systems and review the behavior of all officers. No communication will go out without our approval. The commander nodded, though his face showed worry. Yes, sir. As the investigation began, life at the base changed completely. Soldiers moved quietly. Engineers worked under supervision, and everyone felt watched. For the first time, discipline was not just a rule but a shadow over every step. Mira was called to give her report. She entered the command room where the same general who had spoken to Daniel waited. Please sit down, he said. She sat carefully. The general spoke with a calm tone. We know this was difficult for you. Tell us what happened. Mira told everything from the beginning. She did not raise her voice or cry. She explained the power problem, Ralph's shouting, and the moment he hit her. She also mentioned that Daniel had helped her afterward and stood up for her. The general listened with full attention. When she finished, he said, Thank you for your honesty. You are brave to stay calm during that situation. We will make sure justice is served. Mira bowed her head slightly. I only did what was right, sir. The general smiled faintly. Sometimes doing what is right takes more strength than a battle. When she left the room, she saw Daniel standing outside waiting. He gave her a small smile. Did they ask too many questions? Not too many, she replied. They were kind. That is good, Daniel said. He looked around. The base feels strange now. So quiet, Mira nodded. It feels like the desert has entered our walls. As the day passed, the generals continued their work. They called officers one by one. Files were checked. Communication records were opened. They even inspected the drones and power lines. Nothing was left unseen. At night, Daniel returned to his workshop. He wanted to keep himself busy. He repaired a damaged transport engine under a small light. The sound of tools gave him comfort. Mira came in after a while. You are still working? She asked. Yes. It helps me think, he said. She picked up a wrench and handed it to him. Then let me help. For a few minutes, they worked in silence. Then Mira spoke softly. Thank you for reporting what happened. You risked a lot. Daniel looked at her and shook his head. I did what anyone should do. I only sent a message. Most people would have stayed silent, Mira said. But you did not. Daniel thought for a moment.
Silence is what allows wrong things to grow.
If I stayed quiet, this base would have remained the same. Before Mira could reply, a soldier entered the workshop and saluted. The general wants to see you both in the meeting hall. They followed the soldier through the dark hallway. The hall was filled with officers and soldiers standing in formation. The 3 generals were at the front. Ralph stood between 2 guards. His hands were behind his back. His eyes looked angry but defeated. The senior general raised his voice. After reviewing reports, we have found that Officer Ralph violated command law and personal conduct. His actions are unacceptable in any military base. The soldiers stood still. The general continued. From this day, he is removed from all duties and will be taken to Central Command for judgment. Ralph tried to speak, but the general stopped him. Enough. You have done harm where you should have protected. There is no excuse. The guards led Ralph away. The room stayed silent. The soldiers watched as the door closed behind him. Then the general turned to face everyone. This base will not be forgotten for what happened here. One act of cruelty has brought change to the entire command. But one act of courage has restored honor. You should all remember that truth. He looked directly at Daniel and Mira. You both showed that integrity still lives among our people. That is the example we need. Daniel felt every eye in the room turn toward him. He was not used to such attention. Mira stood quietly beside him, her heart full of relief. The general continued. Base 47 will remain under inspection for 1 more week. After that, it will reopen with a new command structure. Until then, everyone will follow the new code of respect. If anyone disobeys, they will face the same justice. After the speech ended, the soldiers were dismissed. Daniel and Mira walked out together into the night air. The desert was cold now. The sky was full of stars. Mira looked up and said, It feels peaceful for the first time. Daniel nodded. Maybe this place can change after all. They walked past the silent aircrafts. Guards stood around them watching the horizon. The wind carried the sound of engines cooling down. In the distance, the generals spoke among themselves near their transport. One of them said, "Sometimes a small act of truth shakes an entire system." The senior general replied, "Yes, and sometimes one person's courage teaches a whole base how to stand again." The next morning, orders were sent across the desert. The message was simple. Base 47 will continue to serve, but it will serve with honor. Mira returned to the control room to repair the systems again. Daniel joined her. Together they worked quietly, side by side. The fear that once filled the room was gone. The screens glowed softly as power flowed through the circuits again. The base was alive, but it was not the same place anymore. The soldiers spoke politely. Officers treated workers with respect, and no one raised their voice in anger. The wound of one moment had changed the spirit of everyone. When the generals prepared to leave, the senior general called Daniel and Mira one last time. He said, "You have done more than you know. This report will go to the highest level. People will learn from what you did here." Mira bowed her head. "Thank you, sir," Daniel replied. "We only did what was right." The general smiled faintly. "That is exactly why it matters." The aircrafts rose into the sky once more, leaving trails of sand behind. The soldiers watched silently. The base commander stood tall, his face thoughtful. The sound of engines faded and the desert grew quiet again. But deep inside Base 47, something stronger than walls had been built. It was respect, born from courage and truth. The story of that day would travel far, carried by every soldier who saw it, as a reminder that one action can stop fear and bring back honor. A few days had passed since the generals left Base 47. The desert sun still burned every morning, but the air inside the base felt lighter. Soldiers worked calmly, machines ran smoothly, and there was no shouting or fear. Everyone followed the new rules that the generals had introduced. Respect had become the strongest command. Mira and Daniel continued to work together in the control room. The damaged systems were almost fully restored. The hum of energy filled the air again. Still, something about the base did not feel normal to Daniel. He could not explain it, but deep inside, he felt that the story of Ralph and the generals was not over. That evening, Daniel sat alone in his workshop. The sound of small tools echoed softly. As he worked on a broken drone, he heard footsteps behind him. When he turned, he saw the base commander standing at the door. The commander was an older man with gray hair and a strict face. "Daniel," he said firmly, "walk with me." Daniel wiped his hands and followed him outside. The sun had already begun to set behind the desert hills. The wind carried sand across the ground. They stopped near the old hangar at the edge of the base. The commander looked around before speaking. "You are a good man. You have done what few would dare to do. But you should know that the generals did not come only for Ralph." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean, sir?" "There is something more," the commander said quietly. "The base has been under watch for months because of missing supplies. Power cells, drone parts, and coded chips have been disappearing. Central Command believed someone here was selling them to outsiders." Daniel's eyes widened. "You mean there is a spy?" The commander nodded. "That is what the generals came to confirm. Ralph's action made it easier for them to enter the base without raising suspicion. But now that they are gone, their team is still watching from afar. They asked me to keep an eye on everything." Daniel felt a chill. The idea that someone inside the base might be stealing or working with outsiders worried him deeply. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. The commander said, "Because they trust you. They read your report. They said you notice things that others ignore. If you see anything strange, report it to me immediately." Daniel agreed and returned to his workshop. The stars began to appear above the desert. The night was quiet, but his mind was not. The next day, Mira joined him early. "We have to check the communication line," she said. "The signal is weak again." They walked to the tower behind the main yard. The line ran through a network of small cables and antennas. Mira climbed the ladder halfway to check the connections while Daniel stood below, watching the monitors. "Everything looks fine here," she called down. Daniel checked the readings again. "Wait, the power is being pulled from a different source. It should not be doing that." Mira climbed down and looked at the panel. "You are right. The signal is being rerouted." "But who changed it?" They followed the wire connections into the underground section near the storage bay. When they reached the end of the passage, they found a small box hidden behind a pile of crates. Inside the box was a device they had never seen before. It had blinking lights and a small transmitter. Mira leaned closer. "This is not standard equipment." Daniel studied it carefully. "Someone connected this to our communication line. It sends a copy of every message to another receiver." They both looked at each other. Someone was spying on the base communications. "We have to tell the commander," Mira said quickly. Daniel picked up the device carefully and placed it in a small container. They walked straight to the commander's office. When he saw the device, his face turned serious. "Where did you find this?" he asked. "In the storage area behind the power lines," Daniel replied. The commander called 2 guards. "Seal that section. No one enters without permission." He then looked at them both. "You may have just found the proof we needed." That evening, the commander sent a coded message to the generals. Within hours, new aircrafts appeared in the night sky. They landed quietly behind the base. A small team of investigators arrived wearing dark uniforms. They met with the commander, Daniel, and Mira in secret. The lead investigator, a calm woman with sharp eyes, said, "We will handle this quietly. No one else must know. If the spy learns that we found the device, they may destroy the remaining evidence." Mira nodded. "We will help in any way we can." The investigator smiled slightly. "Then we begin tonight." They divided into small teams and searched the base in silence. Every corner, every storage unit, every control room was checked. Daniel and Mira worked together with one of the investigators. As they moved through the hallways, Mira whispered, "I never thought this place held such secrets," Daniel replied. "Sometimes danger hides behind quiet walls." In one of the back rooms, they found another clue. A shipment log showed missing supplies marked as delivered. Someone had changed the records to hide the theft. The signature on the form was from a name neither of them recognized. When they showed it to the investigator, she nodded. This is how they covered their tracks. Whoever did this had access to high-level codes. They continued until sunrise. When morning came, they gathered in the command hall. The investigator spread the files across the table. "This is no small matter," she said. "The stolen parts were being sent to a group outside the military. They wanted to build illegal machines using our technology." Mira's eyes widened. "But who here would do that?" The investigator looked at the commander. "We believe there is more than one person involved." The commander sighed. "We must find them before they act again." As the day passed, the investigation grew deeper. Soldiers were questioned quietly. Access logs were checked. Daniel kept thinking about the communication line. He decided to return to the area once more, hoping to find something that was missed. When he entered the underground section again, he noticed fresh footprints in the dust near the cables. Someone had been there after they sealed the place. He followed the prints carefully. They led to a small side door that opened into the outer desert. Daniel felt his heart beat faster. He opened the door slightly and saw a figure walking toward the dunes. The person carried a small bag and looked around nervously. Daniel ran back to call the guards, but by the time they arrived, the figure had vanished into the desert night. The commander ordered drones to search the area. After an hour, one drone found a signal near an old watchtower 2 kilometers away. Daniel and Mira joined the search team. They moved through the sand quietly until they reached the tower. Inside, they found the same hidden transmitter device and a small pile of coded chips. The investigator examined them and said, "This is enough proof. The spy must have escaped, but their trail is clear." The team returned to the base. The commander ordered all communication lines shut until further notice. The generals were informed again. Within hours, they sent a message. "Hold your position. Reinforcements are on the way." That night, the base lights stayed on. Soldiers stayed awake, guarding every entrance. Mira looked out at the desert from the window of the control room. The sand moved in waves under the moonlight. Daniel joined her and said quietly, "It feels like we are waiting for a storm." She nodded. "But this time we will be ready." The next morning, the first aircraft appeared again, carrying more investigators and a team of security specialists. The generals themselves were coming back. News spread across the base quickly. Everyone knew that something far larger than a personal conflict had begun. The truth that started with one wrong act was now uncovering something dangerous that could reach far beyond Base 47. And in the center of it stood Daniel and Mira, the 2 people who had chosen to speak when everyone else stayed silent. The base was silent, more silent than it had ever been. No engines, no alarms, no shouting soldiers. It felt like the air itself had stopped moving. Every soldier stood still, waiting for the next command that never came. The three generals had taken control of everything, and now the place looked more like a graveyard than a military camp. Inside the command tent, General Hask and his two fellow generals stood behind a large table filled with reports, data sheets, and communication devices. They were not discussing victory or tactics. They were searching for the truth. The soldier named Rian stood outside the tent waiting. His eyes were heavy from the long night, but he didn't move. He had been ordered to stay close because the generals might call him at any moment. His thoughts were filled with confusion. He kept asking himself why a simple strike, an act he didn't even mean to happen that way, had brought three generals running from high command. Inside the tent, General Hask broke the silence. The data says she is not an ordinary woman. Her name is Mira. Her identity was hidden under 3 different codes. General Taryn, the oldest among them, leaned forward. A hidden agent? No, Hask said. Something more complicated. She was not sent here for combat. She was part of a secret diplomatic mission. She came from the Outer Council. The room became even more tense. The Outer Council was not part of the normal chain of command. It was a group that dealt with alien governments, secret alliances, and forbidden technology. No one in the base had any idea that someone from the council had been living among them disguised as a civilian. So when that soldier hit her, General Loran said slowly, he struck someone connected to the council itself. General Hask nodded. And the council does not forgive such mistakes. Outside, Ryan saw a shadow move near him. It was Mira. She had been treated for her injury and looked pale, but her eyes were strong again. When she stepped closer, Ryan stood at attention. You should rest, he said carefully. I do not rest when people hide the truth, she replied softly. They told me the generals are here to investigate. But I already know what they will find. What do you mean? Ryan asked. She looked at him, her expression calm but distant. The attack on me was not your fault. You were being controlled, Ryan froze. Controlled? Yes, she said. They wanted a reaction. They used a signal in your communication link, the one that connects to your helmet. It sends a small pulse to your brain, strong enough to change your behavior for a few seconds. You remember losing control for a moment, don't you? He nodded slowly. He had thought it was just anger or confusion. But now, hearing her say it like that, something clicked in his memory. The flash in his mind, the sudden noise, the strange voice that had said his name before he lost control. It all made sense. Mira continued. Someone wanted me attacked so they could shut down this base. The generals think it was about me, but it was about something else entirely. What could that be? The research in this base, she said. You are guarding technology you don't understand. Something built from alien metal. The council has been watching it for months. Before Ryan could reply, General Hask stepped out of the tent. He saw them and called Rian inside. Mira followed him without being asked. The generals were waiting. Hask looked at Mira first. You should be resting, but since you are here, maybe you can explain why your file says you were not supposed to make contact with any soldier. Mira's voice was steady. Because someone in your ranks wanted me to disappear. The council sent me here to inspect the alien artifact you found in the mines below this base. I had to do it quietly. But someone discovered my identity and wanted to end my mission. So they used your man here as a weapon. General Taryn frowned. You're saying we have a traitor? Yes, Mira replied. And not just one. The signal that reached him could not have been sent without access to your internal systems. General Hask looked at Ryan. Do you remember anything before it happened? Ryan hesitated, then said, A voice in my earpiece said my name. It wasn't any of my team. It sounded mechanical. The generals exchanged quick glances. Lauren walked to a console and opened a log file. After a few seconds, he turned back to them. There was an unauthorized transmission 5 minutes before the event. It came from Sector 7, the storage area where the artifact is kept, Mira said quietly. Then that's where the truth lies. Without delay, they formed a team and headed toward Sector 7. The storage tunnels were long, cold, and filled with old machinery. The lights flickered as they moved deeper. When they reached the chamber, the sight stunned everyone. The alien artifact was gone. The large, capsule-shaped object that had been kept under heavy guard for months was missing. Only the containment field flickered weakly in its place. General Hask's face turned pale. This base was shut down because someone wanted to cover their tracks. The attack on Mira was a distraction. Ryan stepped forward, scanning the area. "There's something on the floor," he said. He bent down and picked up a small metal chip. It had strange symbols carved into it. Mira took it from him and looked at it carefully. "This is part of the artifact. Whoever took it tried to destroy the rest, but this piece broke off." Lauren called over the radio for a scan of the nearby tunnels. The reply came quickly. "No trace of the capsule, sir. All cameras went offline an hour ago." Mira looked at Ryan. "You are not the only one controlled. Whoever sent that signal could be using it again right now." Before anyone could speak, the power in the base flickered, and a deep humming filled the air. The ground shook slightly. The lights dimmed, and from far away a strange glow appeared down the tunnel. General Hask ordered everyone to take cover. The glow grew brighter, and then a voice, not human, came through their radios. It was calm, almost whispering. "The experiment continues. You cannot stop what has already begun." Ryan looked at Mira. "That voice, it's the same one I heard before." Mira's expression turned serious. "Then it's not a traitor. It's the artifact itself." The generals were stunned. The idea that the alien object could think or speak was beyond belief. But as the walls trembled again and the light spread across the tunnel, no one doubted it anymore. The artifact had not been stolen. It had awakened. General Hask raised his voice over the noise. "Seal the exits. We cannot let it leave the base." Soldiers ran to obey, but the ground split open in the middle of the chamber, and a beam of white light burst upward. Ryan shielded his eyes. Mira reached for his arm and shouted, "If it escapes, it won't stop here. It will reach the council next." The beam faded after a few seconds, leaving behind silence once again. The artifact was gone, vanished into the earth or the sky, no one could tell. The base was a wreck of broken lights and confusion. The three generals stood together, realizing that what had started as a simple investigation had turned into something much bigger. Mira looked around at the frightened soldiers. "This was not an accident," she said. "It was a warning. The artifact wanted to be found. It wanted this base closed." Ryan stood beside her, his mind filled with questions but also a new sense of purpose. Whatever the artifact was, it had chosen to reveal itself through him. And deep inside, he knew the story was far from over. The morning after the beam of light vanished, the entire base was in ruins. Half of the systems were dead. Communication lines were cut, and the soldiers were working silently to clean the damage. No one spoke much. The memory of the light, the strange voice, and the shaking ground had left a mark that could not be erased. Ryan walked slowly through the halls. He could still feel a strange pulse inside his head, like the echo of something that had touched his mind. He didn't understand what the artifact wanted or why it had chosen him, but he knew one thing. It wasn't finished. Outside, the sky looked strange, with faint rings of light in the clouds. Some soldiers whispered that the object had escaped into orbit. Others believed it had gone underground. Nobody knew the truth. General Hask stood near the main gate with the other two generals. Their faces looked tired but calm. They were waiting for a final report from Mira, who was checking the data collected before the systems went down. When she finally came, she held a small device in her hand. "I found something," she said. "It left a signal behind. It's repeating a single line in a pattern. It says, 'We return what you took.'" The words filled the air like a heavy weight. General Loran frowned. "What does that mean?" "We didn't take anything from them." "That artifact was found in the mine." Mira shook her head. "Maybe we didn't take it. Maybe someone else did long before us. The artifact could be part of something larger, something that belonged to a lost race. It may not see us as enemies, only as thieves holding what is not ours." Ryan listened quietly. The words made sense in a strange way. The energy that came from the artifact didn't feel like an attack. It felt like a call, like something was trying to find its way home. General Hask said, "Then we have to follow it before it reaches a populated zone. If that thing activates again, it could destroy everything around it." Mira nodded. "There's a reading from the hills 2 miles north. The same energy signature was detected there." They prepared a small group to investigate. Ryan, Mira, and 10 soldiers under Hask's command. The morning was cold when they left the broken base behind and marched toward the hills. As they climbed higher, the signal grew stronger. The ground started to glow faintly, as if something beneath the surface was waking up again. Birds flew away in panic and a low hum filled the air. When they reached the top, they saw a circle of stones, old and covered with strange markings. In the center of the circle, the missing artifact floated above the ground, turning slowly, shining like a small sun. Everyone stopped. The light coming from it was warm, not blinding this time. It felt alive. Mira stepped closer. "It's communicating again," she said. She raised her device and symbols appeared on its screen. "It's not just energy. It's sending information," General Hask asked. "Can we understand it?" "Maybe," Mira replied. "It's showing coordinates in a place far from this planet." Ryan walked beside her. "It wants to go home." The soldiers kept their weapons ready, but no one fired. The artifact was not attacking. It was waiting. Mira touched the surface of her device and suddenly the light grew brighter. The artifact reacted to her movement. A deep tone filled the air and every radio and headset crackled with the same voice they had heard before. "Return completed. The chain is restored." The artifact's glow spread across the hill like waves of silver. The stones around it began to move, floating upward slowly. The air became lighter and a strange calm filled everyone's hearts. Then something unexpected happened. The ground beneath their feet trembled again, but not in anger this time. A deep pit opened below the artifact, revealing a tunnel of light leading far down into the earth. Mira whispered, "It wasn't escaping. It was guiding us here." Ryan looked at her. "Do we go in?" Before anyone could answer, General Hask nodded firmly. "We have to know what's down there. This could be the source of everything." One by one, they descended into the light. The tunnel was wide, glowing softly with strange patterns on the walls. The air was warm, and the hum of energy surrounded them like a heartbeat. After several minutes, they reached a chamber deep underground. The sight before them made everyone fall silent. In the center stood a structure of crystal and metal, shaped like a heart. Around it were hundreds of smaller artifacts, all pulsing with light. It was like a sleeping city made of stars. Mira walked slowly toward the center. "This is not a weapon," she said. "It's a memory vault. Each artifact carries knowledge from an ancient race. The one we found above was only a key." Ryan looked around in wonder. "So it was never meant to harm us. It was only trying to reconnect with the rest." The generals exchanged quiet looks. General Terran said, "Then the question is, who disturbed it first?" Mira turned to him. "Long ago, humans or some other explorers may have taken one of these keys. The system saw that as a break in the chain. Now that we've brought it back, it has completed its task." They stood there, surrounded by light and silence, feeling like they were witnessing something sacred. But before they could explore further, Mira's device beeped again. A warning flashed across the screen. "The vault is closing," she said. "It's sealing itself." The lights around them began to dim one by one. The ground shook lightly as the structure started to sink deeper into the earth. "Everyone back to the surface," Hask ordered. They moved quickly, climbing back through the tunnel of fading light. When they reached the top again, the hill had changed. The stones had settled back into place and the glow was gone. The artifact was no longer floating. It had vanished completely, leaving only quiet soil and wind. Rian looked at the empty space. "It's gone for good, isn't it?" Mira nodded softly. "It has returned to where it belongs, but it left something behind." She handed him her device. The screen showed a final message written in simple English. "You protected the chain. Now the memory of your kind is safe." General Hask looked at the message with a thoughtful face. Maybe it recognized us as allies in the end. The soldiers began walking back toward the base. The sun was rising, lighting the broken walls and burnt fields, but the air felt peaceful now. The tension that had filled everyone's hearts was gone. When they reached the base, the communication system suddenly came back online. The council had sent a message. They wanted a report immediately. General Hask said he would handle it himself. Before he went into the command tent, he stopped beside Ryan. "You did well, soldier. You stood through fear and confusion, but you never gave up." Ryan nodded. "Thank you, sir. But I didn't do it alone. Mira showed me the truth." Mira smiled faintly. "You helped me see the other side, too. Sometimes humans act before thinking, but sometimes that's exactly what saves everyone." General Hask went to give his report. Ryan and Mira stood outside the tent, looking toward the horizon where the light had disappeared. For a moment, everything was quiet again. Then a faint shimmer appeared in the sky, like a soft wave of silver crossing the clouds. It lasted only a second, but both of them saw it. Mira whispered, "It's saying goodbye." Rian looked at her with calm eyes. Or maybe it's watching us to make sure we don't break the chain again. The wind carried their words away. The base, once filled with fear, now stood as a place of peace and understanding. The soldiers would rebuild it, but this time with a new purpose. Not just defense, but respect for the unknown. And though no one spoke of it much later, every person who had seen the light that day carried the same thought in their heart, that something ancient and kind had touched their world and decided to let them live in peace.